There are countless ways to make money with property, but in this video, I want to share with you just 5 ways you can make £100,000 from property by using little or even none of your own money. And you look at any of the best of the best, the most successful property entrepreneurs in the world, they are masters at using other people's money. Which leads me on to the first way, which is where you could do a property development project, which makes £200,000 profit, and split those profits 50-50 with an investor. This is what we call a joint venture. And to do a joint venture, very simply, you find an investor that is cash rich and time poor. And if you've developed the skill sets around how to find deals, how to structure capital from investors and banks, and also how to actually manage a project and add value, you can then partner with each other. You create an SPV, which is just a limited company set up for that project, which could just be Tyler and John Properties Limited. We both become directors of that company with 50% of the shares each. And we sign a shareholder agreement, or also what's known as a joint venture or a partnership agreement, which simply outlines whose roles and responsibilities are what. But what's important to know is that investor doesn't actually have to fund 100% of the project. That investor just has to put in the equity piece or the deposit, and then you can get bank financing in the form of a bridging loan or development finance to fund the rest. So for example, on a £400,000 purchase that requires £200,000 of refurbishment works, that's £600,000 of costs. Your joint venture partner would only maybe need to put in between 25% or really around 35% of the total costs. And then once the project is done 6 months later, to keep the math simple, assuming it's worth £800,000, you can sell that asset for £200,000 profit, and you will be entitled to 50% of the profits. And so doing these deals are simple, but not necessarily easy. It's not about how much money you have, it's about your ability to go out and actually find and analyze these deals. Importantly, how to actually go out, raise the finance, and find joint venture partners and get them to commit to the project. You also need a good understanding of capital structures. How does the money from the investor and the money from the banks actually come together, and how is it structured? And lastly, you need to understand how to actually manage and deliver these projects so ultimately they do make a profit. Now, the second way is a little bit easier and maybe better for those that are just starting out in their property journey, but it's also very similar to the one I'm going to share at the end of this video, which is actually my favorite way to make £100,000 in property, and one probably most people watching this video haven't heard of. And so the second strategy is going out and sourcing investment properties and charging a sourcing fee for that process. This is known as deal packaging. This is something a friend of mine, Justin Wilkins, does really well. And so the math to making £100,000 in 1 year doing this is just sourcing 4 deals per month and charging a £2,500 sourcing fee for each deal. With 12 months in the year, that also gives you a month off in the summer to go on holiday, and also a month off in December to go and celebrate Christmas somewhere exotic. And so the third way to make £100,000 is by having a serviced accommodation rent-to-rent business. And simply put, this is where you lease a property from a landlord, and then you operate the property as a serviced accommodation unit on AirBnB and Booking.com, and you make your revenue from the bookings, you pay your costs, you pay the landlord, and then whatever money left over is your profit. And the math to making £100,000 a year doing this is you just need 8 properties that generate just over £1,000 profit every single month. Now, although this model has gained a lot of popularity in recent years, this is no different to how a lot of hotels operate. Here where I live in London, a lot of the big hotels here, they don't actually own the freehold, which means they don't actually own the ground that the hotel sits on. Instead, they just own the leasehold, and then they operate it as a hotel where they serve guests on a night-by-night basis. And this is something my friend Bradley does really well. If you want to go check out a video where I interviewed Bradley and asked him how his business works, at the time of that recording, his business was doing between £20,000 and £30,000 profit per month, and I know it's continued to grow ever since. The fourth way to make £100,000 is a lot more creative, and that is by achieving £200,000 of planning gain and splitting those profits 50-50 with an investor. Now, planning gain refers to the uplift in value in land once planning permission has been achieved. Because, as you can imagine, land with planning permission is a lot more valuable than land without. And now what a lot of people don't actually know is that you can take a site through that planning process and achieve planning permission without actually owning the land itself. Instead, you can use a contract called an option agreement or a simple purchase contract on a subject to planning basis. You enter that contract and agreement with a landowner. You then have control over the site and are able to take it through planning permission and invest what could be 10, 20, 25,000 pounds in planning. And then once planning has been achieved, you can actually sell the land to a developer at a new price without ever actually completing on the land yourself. And so your profit is simply the difference between the price you agreed to sell the land for to the developer and the price you agreed to buy the land for on the contract you entered with the seller. And so the skills and knowledge you need to develop to do a deal like this is you need to understand how to find and identify development opportunities, especially off-market opportunities where there's no planning in place already. You understand how to actually do a financial appraisal on some land and figure out what the residual land value would be, i.e. the land value with planning. And so lastly, the fifth way to make £100,000 in property is by becoming a self-employed estate agent. And so some of you may know with my company, Luxury Property Partners, we have a slightly different model to traditional estate agency. We've taken inspiration from the US and Australia, where agents are on a commission-only basis, but have the opportunity to earn huge commissions. And so in the example of Luxury Property Partners, if you're an agent and you sell £8 million worth of property and the fee that you charge to the client for your services is 2.5%, that is £200,000 of income you're going to generate for the business. And then if you're on 50% commission, you'll be walking away with £100,000 commission. And so to sell £8 million worth of property, that could simply mean selling one house for £8 million. And believe it or not, there are a lot of properties in the UK that sell for much more than that. And it could mean just selling 8 properties at £1 million. The math is pretty simple. And really the sky is the limit with this opportunity. If you've seen the video I did with my business partner, Damien Merry, where he went and picked up his Lamborghini Aventador S, it gives you a great insight into how much agents can earn if they're incredibly skillful at their role and they get great results for their clients. And so make sure you check the description for all of the links to the videos I've mentioned, and I'll see you guys on the next one.